Welcome. Let's get you up to speed on today's key global headlines. We've got quite a range, starting with a really serious incident in Kashmir.
Yes, a tragic attack in Pahalgam, Indian-administered Kashmir. Reports say 26 tourists were killed.
26. That's a significant number.
It is, and it's the deadliest attack there since 2019. What's also notable is that the victims were civilians, tourists, not military personnel. That carries, well, a lot of symbolic weight.
Given the long-standing India-Pakistan tensions over Kashmir, absolutely. How has India responded?
Swiftly and strongly, they've closed the main border crossing with Pakistan. They've also suspended the Indus Water Treaty.
The water treaty, that's been in place since 1960, hasn't it?
Exactly. It's a huge move. Plus, they're expelling Pakistani diplomats, military advisors immediately. More planned, and even told some visa holders to leave within 48 hours.
And Prime Minister Modi?
He posted on X, vowing to bring those responsible to justice, emphasizing India's resolve against terrorism.
What's Pakistan saying?
They're denying any involvement, as you might expect, and they're holding meetings to figure out their own response. This whole dispute, it's led to wars before.
And India always accuses Pakistan of backing armed groups there.
Which Pakistan always denies. Eyewitnesses described just chaos during the attack, families running. There were conflicting reports, but it seems most victims were Hindu men, though a local Muslim man was also killed.
International reaction.
Widespread condemnation. And within India, there's obviously outrage and mourning. A hotel owner there said an attack like this on tourists is unprecedented.
India's defense minister, Rajnath Singh, hinted at a broader response too, didn't he?
He did. He signaled targeting not just the perpetrators, but also those, quote, sitting behind the scenes. It recalls India's previous actions.
Like the surgical strikes in 2016 and the airstrikes after the Pulwama attack in 2019.
Right. Neither led to all-out war. And there was that ceasefire along the line of control in 2021, but the risk of escalation now feels, well, quite high. There's a lot of public pressure in India.
So could we see military action?
Experts are divided. Some suggest limited strikes, maybe like before. But even that carries risks. Pakistan might retaliate.
And it raises questions about security, doesn't it? How could this happen during peak tourist season?
Exactly, a major security lapse. The human cost is devastating, too. An Indian naval officer on his honeymoon apparently asked if he was Muslim before being shot. A local guide, the family's only earner, a businessman holidaying with his family, asked to recite an Islamic verse.
Just awful. His grandfather wants exemplary punishment.
Understandably, there have been protests, shutdowns in Kashmir. Locals are worried this will just scare away tourists, which is vital for their economy.
Okay, let's shift focus now to Ukraine. Former U.S. President Trump has been weighing in.
Yes, criticizing President Zelensky, specifically for refusing to recognize Russian control over Crimea. Trump claims a peace deal was very close, and Zelensky's stance is just prolonging the war.
Which started back in 2014, of course, with the annexation of Crimea and the conflict in the east.
Right, and now there's talk of a potential U.S. framework for a ceasefire. It's complex stuff.
What are the supposed terms?
Well, the idea reported is Russia halts the invasion along current lines, gives up trying to take the rest of those 4 eastern regions.
And in return.
The U.S. would sort of accept the occupied territories as de facto Russian, recognize Crimea as de jure Russian territory, and Ukraine would have to rule out joining NATO.
Sounds like there's still huge gaps, though.
Oh, definitely. What about Western weapons for Ukraine? Russia's demand for demilitarization. When would sanctions be lifted? Lots of unknowns.
And the different parties want different things.
Seems so. Ukraine wants a conditional ceasefire, then talks. The U.S. apparently wants a quick win. Russia seems to want detailed negotiations up front.
Meanwhile, the fighting continues. That bus attack in eastern Ukraine.
Zelensky called it a deliberate war crime. Mostly women working at a plant were injured, civilians targeted again.
And those ceasefire talks in London.
Top U.S. officials were pulled out, replaced by Trump's Ukraine envoy, who called them just technical meetings. Zelensky, for his part, says Ukraine doesn't exclude any format that leads to peace, just wants the killing to stop.
But drone strikes continue on Kharkiv.
Repeatedly. And remember, the Easter ceasefire broke down, and Russia came back with this long list of conditions for any full truce.
No, the U.S. is talking to both sides separately.
That's the report, trying to broker something. And this idea of the U.S. proposing recognition of Crimea as Russian keeps coming up, even though Zelensky has ruled it out.
And Vice President Vance is sticking to Trump's line.
Yes, reiterated that the U.S. would walk away if a deal isn't reached. A very hard stance.
Okay, let's turn to New York. The Harvey Weinstein retrial is underway.
That's right. Opening statements have begun. The prosecution's case centers on Weinstein using his, quote, unfettered power to sexually harass and abuse 3 women.
Who are the women involved this time?
A former TV production assistant, an aspiring actress, and a model, Kaja Sokola, whose allegation dates back to when she was just 16.
Weinstein pleads not guilty, of course. What's the defense strategy?
His lawyer argued the case would fall flat. They're casting doubt on the women's claims, suggesting relationships were mutually beneficial or motivated by fame.
And this retrial is happening because the original conviction was overturned, right?
Yes, because the appeals court said testimony about uncharged conduct shouldn't have been allowed. So this trial focuses on 2 women from the 2020 trial, Jessica Mann and Miriam Haley, plus the new accuser, Sokola.
The prosecution's narrative is consistent, luring women under false pretenses.
Yes, the pattern they allege is luring women to hotel rooms, supposedly for business meetings, then assaulting them, and that victim stayed silent because of his immense power in Hollywood.
But the defense points to continued contact.
Right. They argue friendly messages or continued contact after the alleged encounters prove no assault occurred. It's a key part of their argument.
Just remind listeners, his original 23-year New York sentence was overturned, but he still has that 16-year conviction from California.
Correct, and he's apparently been quite ill, recently hospitalized for heart surgery.
The prosecution is also linking this to the #MeToo movement.
They are, saying the movement gave these women the strength to come forward finally. Weinstein was, a titan of Hollywood, co-founder of Miramax, countless awards for his films.
He also faced civil suits.
Yes, including a $19 million settlement with a group of women back in 2020.
Okay, now to Rome. Huge crowds are gathering at the Vatican.
Indeed. Tens of thousands are lining up in St. Peter's Basilica to pay their respects to Pope Francis. His body is lying in state in an open coffin.
He passed away from a stroke at 88 after a 12-year papacy.
That's right, the first Latin American pope. There was a procession of cardinals and priests, bells tolling. The crowd applauded as his body was carried in.
How long will this period of mourning last?
9 days in the Vatican, with the funeral set for Saturday. St. Peter's is staying open all night because the crowds are just enormous.
People are coming from all over.
Yes, hearing stories from mourners. A couple from Mexico on their honeymoons seeking a connection. An American woman who traveled overnight just to say goodbye, praising his humility, his support for immigrants. Local Italians talking about his connection to the poor, how normal he seemed.
It must be quite an atmosphere inside the basilica.
Very solemn, people kneeling, praying, crossing themselves. Dignitaries are expected for the funeral, the UK Prime Minister, Prince William, among them.
And now the church enters that period, the Sita Vacante.
Exactly. The papal apartments are sealed. The process to elect a successor will begin eventually. His last public appearance on Easter Sunday included a call for peace in Gaza.
That connection to Gaza was quite strong, wasn't it?
Very. Catholics there felt a deep personal link. There were reports he called them daily during the war. They feel like orphans now. Someone shared an anecdote about him greeting them with "Assalamu alaikum."
He also visited the Holy Land back in 2014.
He did, and notably prayed at the barrier in the West Bank. He was explicitly critical of the Gaza war. His book even used the word genocide, which caused controversy. Some Israeli media noted the lack of condolences from their prime minister or foreign minister.
What about in Argentina, his home country?
National mourning was declared, but
Yep.
feelings there are complex. His popularity had declined somewhat over time. He got caught up in political divides, specifically around Peronism. President Milei, initially very critical, did offer condolences.
Let's move to Jordan now. The government there has banned the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yes, this follows arrests related to alleged plots involving rockets and drones. The government says all Brotherhood offices will be closed, assets seized, activities outlawed.
And the Brotherhood's response?
They've denied any links to these plots. No immediate comment on the ban itself. It's unclear how this affects their political wing, the Islamic Action Front, or IAF.
They're the largest opposition group in parliament, aren't they?
They are. Their headquarters were reportedly raided. The IAF Secretary General insists they're independent of the Brotherhood and committed to the law. Remember, Jordan's top court ruled the Brotherhood dissolved back in 2020, but they kept operating.
What are the specific allegations behind the recent arrests?
The Intelligence Department announced 16 arrests. They claim these individuals were planning attacks targeting national security, involving explosives, weapons, even manufacturing rockets and drones, and undergoing training.
The Interior Minister made further claims.
Yeah, saying Brotherhood members were operating in the shadows, undermining stability, finding explosives, weapons, covert facilities, even trying to recruit people and destroy documents.
But the Brotherhood denies all this.
Completely. They maintain they're committed to peaceful approaches. The Brotherhood, of course, started in Egypt, aiming for a state based on Sharia law, and it's banned in Egypt and several other Arab nations.
Okay, shifting gears to Istanbul, there's been a series of earthquakes.
Yes, including a significant 6.2 magnitude tremor. It sent many residents fleeing their homes in fear.
Any casualties or major damage?
Thankfully, no deaths reported, but 151 people were injured, apparently mostly from jumping from balconies or windows in panic. Very little major structural damage reported so far.
Where was the epicenter?
The biggest one was centered near Silivri, on the coast of the Sea of Marmara, west of Istanbul proper. It wasn't too deep, about 10 kilometers, and there have been over 50 aftershocks recorded since.
People must be quite shaken up.
Definitely. Residents are saying it's one of the strongest they felt in years, and there's always that underlying fear of the big one in Istanbul. Many spent the night outdoors in parks and public spaces.
But infrastructure held up okay.
Seems so. An abandoned building collapsed, but energy, water, sewage systems are reportedly unaffected. Schools are closed for the rest of the week, though, as a precaution, with grounds open as safe spaces.
It certainly brings back memories of those devastating earthquakes in southern Turkey last year.
Absolutely. And Istanbul, with 16 million people, sits right near that major North Anatolian fault line. It's a constant worry.
Now, let's talk about Elon Musk. He's stepping back from his government role.
Yes, he's pledged to significantly cut back his involvement with the Department for Government Efficiency, or DOGE as it's known.
This comes after Tesla reported some pretty bad numbers, right?
Exactly. A huge drop in profit and sales for Tesla. Musk has been leading DOGE since last year, focusing on cutting U.S. government spending and jobs.
Why the change of heart now?
He says he'll reduce his time allocation from next month. It follows accusations he's been neglecting Tesla. Plus, there have been protests and boycotts of Tesla cars linked to his political involvement.
Is there also a technical reason?
Well, yeah. The limit for temporary government employees like him, 130 days a year, is apparently nearing its end. Trump had previously said he wanted to keep Musk as long as I could.
So what were those Tesla numbers exactly?
For the first quarter, car sales dropped 20% and profits plunged over 70%. Tesla warned of continued challenges due to, quote, changing political sentiment. Musk directly blamed the boycotts for the sales decline.
How has the stock market reacted?
Tesla's share value is down significantly this year overall, though it did rise a bit after this latest earnings report. The whole situation with Trump's tariffs on China also complicates things for Tesla's supply chain, even though they assemble cars in the U.S.
Musk has clashed over trade policy before, hasn't he?
Yes, particularly with trade advisor Peter Navarro. Musk believes Tesla is less affected than others by the tariffs, but admits they're still tough.
What are others saying?
Jorg L., a former Tesla director, suggested Musk really needs to refocus on Tesla and the quality of its products. For its part, Tesla keeps highlighting its focus on artificial intelligence as key to future growth.
Okay, let's move to China now. And a very different kind of story, cosmetic surgery. It's booming there.
It really is. The report highlights one woman, Abby Wu, who's had over 100 procedures since she was 14.
100 since she was 14. That's incredible.
It's extreme. She described her first surgery as traumatic, and there's an ongoing physical cost. And it's overwhelmingly young women seeking these procedures, 80% female, average age just 25.
What kind of procedures are popular? Have the beauty standards changed?
Yes, they seem to be evolving, moving away from just Western or K-pop ideals towards something described as hyper-feminine, almost infantile. Things like ear tilting, widening the lower eyelid, shortening the upper lip.
And technology plays a role.
Big time. Cosmetic surgery apps are huge. They use algorithms to analyze your face and recommend surgeries. Celebrities and influencers also drive these trends massively.
But with this boom, are there safety concerns?
Huge concerns. Clinics are popping up everywhere, but there's a shortage of qualified practitioners. This leads to many unlicensed operations and, inevitably, a rising number of botched surgeries.
Are there specific examples?
Yes, the report mentions Yu, who had baby-face collagen injections at an unlicensed clinic with severe results, needing multiple unsuccessful repair surgeries. And actress Gao Liu, whose nose surgery went wrong even at a licensed clinic because the surgeon apparently wasn't properly qualified for that procedure.
Wow. And there are even scams involved.
Yeah. Yes, a particularly nasty one where young women are offered jobs, but then within 24 hours, they're pressured into taking out loans for cosmetic surgery as a condition of getting the job.
So debt and exploitation are rife.
It seems so. Even live streaming companies are reportedly profiting from these arrangements. The story mentions Abby and her friends editing their photos constantly, struggling to name a facial feature they wouldn't change. It shows how extreme this pursuit of beauty has become.
And Abby herself plans to continue.
Despite the physical and financial toll, she says she'll never stop her journey of becoming more beautiful. It's quite a stark picture.
Let's stay in Asia, moving to India. There's a report highlighting what's called a crisis of overcriminalization.
Yes, from the Vitti Center for Legal Policy. It's quite striking. They found 370 federal laws in India that contain criminal provisions, criminalizing over 7,300 acts or omissions.
7,000. What kind of acts are we talking about?
Many seem like very minor, everyday things. Examples given include tethering an animal improperly, fixing a pap without a license, not displaying the name of a building owner, ignoring a school attendance order, even littering in a zoo, or having pigs wander onto a field.
Fixing a tap without a license could land you with a criminal record.
Potentially, yes. Or disturbing zoo animals, not walking your dog enough, promoting infant milk substitutes, delays in filing certain documents. The list goes on. And jail is the default punishment in 73% of these cases.
That seems disproportionate.
Well, the report points out inconsistencies, too. Sometimes minor offenses carry the same penalty as much more serious ones. While many of these laws are rarely enforced, their existence creates opportunities for corruption, rent-seeking, and potential misuse by authorities.
That's the overall impact.
It negatively affects daily life, makes doing business more complicated, and it adds a huge burden to an already overloaded judicial system, over 34 million pending cases, and overcrowded prisons, plus a police force facing staff shortages.
What's the recommendation?
The report suggests limiting criminal law primarily to acts that genuinely threaten core societal values. The government has actually said it plans to scrap criminal penalties in over 100 existing legal provisions, so there's some movement.
Okay, let's head to Europe now. A massive tunnel project between Denmark and Germany.
Yes, the Fehmarn Belt Tunnel. It's under construction beneath the Baltic Sea. It's going to be 18 kilometers or 11 miles long.
Making it the world's longest of its kind.
The world's longest prefabricated road and rail tunnel. It's quite an engineering feat.
How does that work? Prefabricated?
Instead of boring through bedrock like the Channel Tunnel, they're building massive concrete sections elements on land, floating them out and sinking them into a trench dredged on the seafloor, then joining them up underwater.
Where is this being built?
The main construction site is huge, on the Danish island of Lolland. They've built a special harbor and a massive factory to produce these elements. Each one is about 217 meters long, 42 meters wide, made of reinforced concrete.
That sounds like an unprecedented scale for this kind of tunnel.
It really is. The project cost is around 7.4 billion, mostly funded by Denmark, with some EU support. It's seen as a major EU infrastructure project.
What's the main goal?
To significantly strengthen travel links between Scandinavia and mainland Europe, reduce journey times, and encourage a shift away from flying.
How much faster will travel be?
Dramatically faster. The crossing between Redbyhaven in Denmark and Puttgarten in Germany will take 10 minutes by car or 7 minutes by train, compared to a 45-minute ferry ride now. And Copenhagen to Hamburg by train could be half to about 2.5 hours.
It's a greener option, too.
That's the idea. A greener shortcut for freight and passengers, cutting carbon emissions. The tunnel itself will have 5 parallel tubes, 2 for rail, 2 for road traffic, and 1 for maintenance and emergencies.
How do they get those huge segments into place?
It's incredibly precise. They tow these enormous elements, over 73,000 tons each, out to sea, then use ballast tanks to slowly sink them into the prepared trench. They use underwater cameras, GPS, aiming for just 15 millimeters of precision. There's even a special pin-and-catch system for alignment.
Why not just bore a tunnel?
The ground under the sea there is too soft, mostly clay and chalk. A bored tunnel wasn't really feasible. They considered a bridge initially, but concerns about wind disruption for trains and potential ship collisions led them to choose the immersed tunnel.
Has it been smooth sailing?
Not entirely. The agreement was signed back in 2008, but there were delays due to legal challenges from ferry operators and environmental groups worried about the impact on marine life, like larvae and harbor porpoises.
Were those challenges resolved?
Yes, a court dismissed the main environmental challenge in 2020. The company building it, Femern, says they're taking steps to minimize the impact, including creating a large wetland nature area using the dredged material.
When is it expected to open?
The target is 2029. They expect over 100 trains and 12,000 cars to use it daily. There will be tolls to repay the state-backed loans, which might take about 40 years. It's
Yep.
also hoped to boost jobs and tourism in the Lowland region.
Let's cross the Atlantic to Canada now. An election is coming up, and early voting is high.
Record numbers, actually.
Yeah.
7.3 million people have already voted in advance polls. That's up 25% from the 2021 election.
What are the key issues driving this turnout?
Well, the ongoing trade tensions with the U.S. are definitely a factor. Trump's comments about Canada becoming the 51st state haven't gone unnoticed. And energy policy is huge.
How are the parties polling?
Currently, the Liberals under Mark Carney seem to have a lead over Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives. Carney is really focusing his campaign on standing up to Trump and his tariffs. Poilievre held a big rally recently, too.
What about the other parties?
The Bloc Québécois and the NDP are also in the mix, as usual. But Carney is positioning the Liberals as the best bet for managing that crucial U.S. relationship.
You mentioned energy policy. How has that shifted since the last election?
Significantly, back in 2021, the environment was a top concern, and Canada passed a net zero emissions law. Now, the industrial carbon tax is quite unpopular.
And Poilievre's pledging to scrap it.
Yes, he's labeled Carney, carbon tax Carney. There's debate about whether scrapping it is politically smart or environmentally damaging.
What's Carney's energy plan then?
He's talking about making Canada a global superpower in both conventional and green energy. He calls it a pragmatic approach, fast-tracking green projects, investing in carbon capture technology. Poilievre, meanwhile, is more focused on boosting the traditional oil and gas sector.
That U.S. relationship is critical for oil and gas, isn't it?
Absolutely. Canada is the largest foreign supplier of oil to the U.S. About 90% of Canadian crude exports go south, so potential energy tariffs are a big worry. Carney even called the reliance on U.S. pipelines a national security problem.
Is there talk of building more pipelines within Canada?
Yes, there's revived interest in pipelines to move oil and gas eastwards towards overseas markets. Both main parties are promising to fast-track these energy corridors, though Carney has kind of flip-flopped on pipeline support in the past.
But this push for fossil fuels clashes with climate commitments, doesn't it? Especially with rising climate impacts.
It's a major tension. Weather-related insured losses in Canada reportedly tripled in 2024 alone. The Bloc Québécois leader dismissed talk of clean oil and gas as fairy tales.
What are Canada's actual climate targets?
Internationally, they've committed to cutting emissions by 45% below 2005 levels by 2030. As of 2023, they were only down about 8.5%. So whoever wins faces a huge challenge to meet that goal. The election is April 28th.
Okay, a quick hop over to Israel. A very rare shark attack.
Extremely rare, yes. Off the coast of northern Israel, near Hadera, which is not far from Tel Aviv, remains were discovered, believed to be those of a missing swimmer, a 40-year-old man, according to local media.
Why are sharks in that area?
It's known that sharks, particularly dusky and sandbar sharks, gather there, especially this time of year. They're attracted by the warm water discharged from a nearby power plant and also fish from a stream. But they're usually considered harmless to humans.
How rare are attacks there?
Incredibly rare. There hasn't been a recorded fatal shark attack in Israeli water since 1948. Witnesses reported seeing blood in the water and hearing screams. Apparently, sharks had been seen circling the day before. One source says this is only the 4th documented shark attack ever in Israel's history.
A truly unusual and tragic event. Now let's look at the Dominican Republic and deportations of Haitians.
Yes, this is causing concern among rights groups. The Dominican Republic has deported over 130 Haitian women and children recently. This includes 48 pregnant women and 39 new mothers.
Why is this happening now?
It's part of a broader crackdown on undocumented migrants, President Abinader has implemented 15 measures aimed at reducing their numbers, citing the strain on public services, particularly healthcare.
So hospitals are involved.
Yes. Public hospitals are now required to check patients' IDs, work permits, proof of residence. If someone lacks papers, they're treated, but then apparently handed over for deportation.
How many people have been deported this year?
Over 80,000 people were deported to Haiti just in the first 3 months of this year. Rights groups are calling these latest deportations, especially of pregnant women and new mothers, cruel.
Particularly given the situation in Haiti right now.
Yeah, exactly. Haiti is facing extreme gang violence, over 5,600 killed already this year. Hospitals there are barely functioning, many closed due to gang activity. The UN has warned Haiti is near a point of no return.
What happens to those deported?
They're reportedly taken to a detention center where biometric data is collected before being handed over to Haitian authorities at the border. The Dominican Immigration Department claims they were treated with dignity and transported comfortably.
Moving to Ghana now, where the Chief Justice has been suspended.
Yes, quite an unprecedented move by President John Mahama. Chief Justice Gertrude Torkornoo has been suspended. It's the first time this has ever happened in Ghana's history.
Why was she suspended?
3 petitions were filed against her, making undisclosed allegations and calling for her removal. This automatically triggered an investigation, and the president suspended her pending the outcome.
We don't know what the allegations are.
No, the contents of the petitions haven't been made public, and Mr. Corno hasn't commented. The opposition is furious, calling it a brazen judicial coup and an assault on judicial independence. They accuse the president of trying to pack the courts.
What does the presidency say?
Just that the suspension is procedural to allow the investigation into the allegations to proceed. There have been accusations in the past that the Supreme Court, under her leadership, sided with the former president and his party in political cases.
Can a Chief Justice be removed easily?
No, only on specific grounds like proven incompetence or misbehavior after an investigation. Ms. Okorno was only nominated in 2023 and actually survived a previous removal request earlier this year. A 5-member committee has now been set up to investigate these latest allegations. A former attorney general called the suspension a complete charade and the biggest assault on the judiciary.
Okay, let's go to Lithuania. The capital, Vilnius, has unveiled an invasion evacuation plan.
It has. The plan outlines how the city's roughly 540,000 residents would be ordered to leave if the city were overrun by enemy forces.
This is clearly linked to fears about Russia.
Absolutely. Lithuania, like its Baltic neighbors, has long warned about Russian aggression, and fears have obviously heightened since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. They've been significantly boosting their defense spending.
And Vilnius is strategically vulnerable.
It is. It's very close to the border with Belarus, which is a Russian ally hosting Russian troops, and also near Kaliningrad, that heavily militarized Russian exclave on the Baltic Sea.
Is this plan causing alarm?
The mayor emphasized it shouldn't cause panic, and doesn't mean the threat level has suddenly increased. He said it incorporates lessons learned from how Ukraine responded to the Russian invasion.
Is it only for invasion scenarios?
Primarily, yes, but officials say it could also be activated for other major emergencies like natural disasters, a nuclear incident, or a major infrastructure collapse. Lithuania, remember, was part of the Soviet Union. Now it's in NATO and the EU, a strong supporter of Ukraine, constantly warning about Russian expansionism.
And there are military drills planned nearby.
Yes, Belarus and Russia are planning large-scale joint drills in September near Lithuania's border. It highlights the vulnerability of that narrow land corridor known as the Suwałki Gap.
Finally, let's turn to Tanzania. Opposition leader Tundu Lissu has been arrested.
Yes, he's been arrested and detained. He's been charged with serious offenses, including treason and publishing false information.
What led to the arrest?
It relates to a speech he gave where he allegedly called for a rebellion and disruption of upcoming elections. His rallying cry has been, "No reforms, no elections."
Why that stance?
He argues the current electoral system is rigged in favor of the long-ruling CCM party. Lissu recently ousted his party's former chairman, seeing him as too willing to compromise with the government.
And his party is facing issues with the election.
Yes, his party, Chadema, has actually been disqualified from the upcoming October elections because they refused to sign an official code of conduct, which they view as just a ploy to sideline the opposition.
Are there broader concerns about repression?
There are. Human rights groups point to incidents like the abduction and killing of a Chadema party official last year, and candidates being barred from running in local elections. The Catholic Church has called for Lissu's release and for fair elections.
What is the government saying?
The prime minister has promised security and fairness in the elections, but arrests continue. One analyst commented that Tanzania seems to be returning to the kind of repression seen under the previous president, Magufuli.
Lissu himself has faced danger before, hasn't he?
He has. He survived an assassination attempt back in 2017, was shot multiple times. Chadema is demanding significant electoral reforms, like an independent electoral commission, and changes to how election disputes are handled.
Is Lissu's confrontational strategy supported by everyone in his party?
There appears to be a rift within Chadema about it. Lissu has pointed to mass protests in Kenya as a potential model. However, analysts doubt there's enough time for major reforms before the October election.
What happens if Chadema remains excluded?
It's likely the ruling CCM party will increase its already large majority in parliament, and Chadema could lose its position as the main opposition party. It's a critical moment for Tanzanian politics.
And that wraps up our look at some of today's major global stories. A lot happening across the world.
Indeed. It's always worth keeping an eye on how these events unfold and connect.
We encourage you to continue following these developments. Thanks for tuning in.